Stop scrolling. If you think justice always comes quietly, you're about to learn what happens when evil picks the wrong target. Make sure you subscribe now because this is one story you'll never forget, and you won't want to miss what's coming next. When 12-year-old Amara Johnson walked into Crestwood Middle School for the first time, the bright cane tapping softly in front of her and her dark glasses shielding the cloudy haze of her unseeing eyes, she had no idea that her life would soon become the center of a storm that would test not only her strength but the very limits of those who thought they could crush her spirit, because Amara wasn't just a blind black girl navigating the cruel world of adolescence, she was also the daughter of Marcus Johnson, a decorated Navy SEAL whose service record read like a legend whispered in hushed tones across military bases and briefing rooms. And while Marcus never bragged about his achievements, those who served alongside him knew that he was a man who had swum through freezing oceans with his lungs burning, crawled through deserts with bloodied knees, and faced enemies who would rather die than surrender, yet somehow still managed to come home every night to tell his daughter bedtime stories that painted the world as a place of beauty she couldn't see but could still feel through his words. But none of that mattered to the cruel trio of 8th graders, Tyler, Brent, and Madison, who looked at Amara's blindness not as something to respect or protect but as a weakness to exploit. And it began with whispers in the cafeteria, cruel jokes about her stumbling over chairs, and mocking the way she asked for help reading labels, until one day Tyler deliberately moved her tray just as she reached for it, sending food crashing into her lap and laughter erupting around the lunchroom, the sound of which cut deeper than the hot soup burning her legs. But instead of crying, Amara straightened her back, lifted her chin, and told them calmly that the world might be dark for her eyes but it wasn't dark for her soul, words that only made the bullies more determined to break her. And as the weeks passed their torment escalated, books ripped from her hands, cruel notes written and slipped into her bag, even a shove that sent her sprawling against the lockers, until one Friday afternoon they went too far, cornering her behind the gym where no teachers watched, laughing as they circled, Brent hissing that she was useless, Madison sneering that she'd never be anything, and Tyler pushing her so hard that her cane snapped in two when it hit the concrete. But what none of them knew was that Marcus had arrived early to surprise his daughter, standing just around the corner as he overheard every word, his blood running hot but his training keeping him silent until he saw enough. And when Tyler reached out to shove Amara again, a large hand shot out of nowhere, gripping the boy's wrist like an iron vice, and Marcus's voice, low and commanding, cut through the air like a blade. "That's my daughter you're touching," a voice that made even the cocky Tyler feel like a rabbit caught in the eyes of a predator. But Marcus didn't lash out, not yet, because he believed in teaching lessons, not just punishing actions. So he crouched beside Amara, gently guiding her trembling hand to his shoulder, whispering that she wasn't alone and that strength didn't always come from sight. And then he stood and faced the bullies, his gaze steady, his presence radiating the kind of controlled danger that comes only from a man who has stared death in the face and never blinked. And he told them stories, not about himself but about blind warriors in history, about people underestimated until their enemies realized too late that darkness was never weakness. And as he spoke he forced Tyler, Brent, and Madison to pick up Amara's broken cane and hand it back to her, demanding they apologize. But kids raised on arrogance don't surrender easily, so Tyler spat that he wasn't afraid of some old man, a mistake he realized seconds later when Marcus stepped closer, his movements sharp yet deliberate, and with nothing more than a shift of his stance and a narrowing of his eyes, he made the boy stumble backward as though he'd been struck, because intimidation doesn't always require fists. It requires mastery of fear, and the bullies, sensing the depth of the storm before them, fled. But the story didn't end there, because the following week Marcus enrolled himself as a volunteer self-defense instructor at the school, bringing Amara along, and together they transformed every taunt into training, every insult into inspiration, teaching not just Amara but every other kid who felt small that strength wasn't about sight or size but about resilience. And while the bullies tried to cling to their old habits, they found themselves increasingly isolated as their classmates rallied around Amara, inspired by her courage and her father's guidance. But just when it seemed the tide had turned completely, a twist arrived. Tyler's older brother, Jason, a dropout known for trouble with the law, decided he didn't like the way Marcus humiliated his sibling, and one night he and his gang decided to follow Amara and Marcus home from the grocery store, headlights flashing in the rearview mirror, footsteps echoing too close behind. And when Marcus guided Amara into the house, Jason and his crew tried to corner him on his own porch, thinking numbers could overwhelm a man, but they underestimated the precision of a Navy SEAL, and in less than 2 minutes Marcus disarmed 3, incapacitated 2, and left Jason gasping on the ground, staring up into the eyes of the man he had sworn to intimidate, and Marcus told him quietly that hurting children was the act of cowards, and cowards never win, and though police sirens soon carried Jason away, the story spread through town, whispered first among kids, then among parents, until Amara's name became not just a symbol of survival but of triumph, and she, too, began to speak out, standing on stages with her cane held high, telling crowds that darkness didn't define her, it refined her, and in every word, every speech, she honored the lessons her father taught, until finally even her old bullies sat quietly in the back of assemblies, too ashamed to meet her gaze but unable to ignore the power of her presence. And years later, when Amara graduated valedictorian, the entire gym rose in thunderous applause, her words echoing as she thanked her father, not for fighting her battles, but for teaching her to fight them herself. And as Marcus sat there, tears hidden behind proud eyes, he knew that his toughest mission had never been in war zones overseas but right here at home, ensuring that his daughter knew she was never a victim, only a warrior who happened to fight her battles in the dark. And so the story of the blind black girl targeted by bullies who didn't know her father was a Navy SEAL became a legend in its own right, a testament to the truth that the strongest light shines where others see only night, and that sometimes the people you least expect turn out to be unbreakable, because while bullies seek weakness, warriors create strength. And Amara Johnson was both her father's pride and her own beacon, living proof that the human spirit, once tested, can never be defeated.